Episode 50. We made it.
Yeah, we've done 50 episodes of this, and it's close to the end of the year. So interesting way
Yeah,
to cap it off. Yeah. So
exactly. It's quite good timing. Yes. I guess we had a few periods there where we had a few delays that were a little bit longer
mhm,
than 2 weeks, and it did feel like it was just creeping to me. It felt like it was creeping towards episode 50. So
mhm.
glad we finally got there.
Yeah, to be sure. So sort of capstone of this year, I think. So this
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we don't have the episode prepared for that, but I guess we got some stuff to talk about. So
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Oddly enough, I hadn't actually prepared anything for the end of the year. That's
right.
interestingly, but that's
Mhm.
fine. Last time I alluded to something that Eric S. Raymond said, uh, and I actually I wanted to go through and just refresh my memory on it a little bit more and to talk a little bit more about it. Eric Raymond is a rather famous figure and sometimes controversial figure in the free and open source movement. He actually wrote and I think I alluded to last time. He wrote an essay and later a book called The Cathedral and the Bazaar, in which he talked about different development models for open source software.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, essentially he was arguing that the bazaar, which is represented by Linux, is it was superior to the alternative, the cathedral, which was represented by projects like FreeBSD and NetBSD and so forth at the time. And he wrote this around about 1994 or something like that, the original article. And I really think it stood the test of time. And at the time, it's important to understand that FreeBSD and Linux were kind of head to head, and it wasn't really clear which one was going to be the winner. And he proposed that Linux would because of the approach it was taking. And I think history has borne that out. Obviously, the world runs on Linux now. 1997, according to my notes, it was 97. So anyway, yeah, even at that point, probably Linux had maybe pulled a little bit ahead by 97, but it was far from clear that it was going to be dominant. Anyway, but that's really just a bit of background for what I was going to talk about. But I am reminded about one little additional point I will just quickly mention. Eric Raymond also um, managed something called the jargon file for a long time, and it was notoriously difficult to get him to make any changes in the jargon file. And I actually managed to
Yeah.
get him to make a change. I actually managed to get him to make a change once. I think it was the term Unixen. He said it didn't appear before the year 2000 or something, and I knew that I'd been using it before then, and I knew that a lot of other people had. And I was able to find only one example online from 1995 or something where it had been used, and I sent it to him. And later on, he amended it, so it said that it was rarely used before 2000. So, but that was quite an achievement at the time, actually getting the jargon file modified. For
Mm.
those who don't know, the jargon file was sort of the authoritative list of all the online slang and so forth that was being used at
Oh,
the time.
all right. Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of it predates. So a lot of it actually predates the way people may communicate online now. But some of it's still around. Anyway, yeah,
Mhm.
it's quite fun to read. And anyway, but none of that is actually what I want to talk about with regard to Eric Raymond.
Okay.
So in 2015, Eric Raymond said that the Ada Initiative and other women in tech groups were attempting to entrap male open source leaders and accuse them of rape. And so he
Mm.
said, and this is actually a quote, and I quote, try to avoid even being alone ever, because there is a chance that a woman in tech advocacy group is going to try to collect your scalp. That's what he said in 2015.
Mm.
And I was already involved in men's rights at the time and was aware of these issues, and I wasn't terribly surprised by that. Disappointed, yes, not necessarily surprised, but I think it shocked a lot of people at the time. Anyway, interestingly enough, the Ada Initiative, and I'm not accusing anybody on the Ada Initiative of anything because I don't have the proof to offer. But interestingly enough, I always thought it was interesting. The Ada Initiative closed down in October 2015, only a few
Mm.
months after these accusations were made. I believe they claimed the reason that they closed down was because the original people who'd been organizing it were no longer able to do so, and they were having trouble finding other people to manage it. I have a little bit of trouble believing that they would have had that much trouble finding people who were willing to manage it. But anyway, yeah, the ADA initiative shut down in October 2015.
Mm.
So for those who don't know, the ADA initiative was named after a fairly famous woman who was in ADA, who was an offsider to Charles Babbage, who did
Oh,
a lot of early work on computers.
yes.
So yes, now Ada's surname uh, escapes me right at this moment. So Ada Lovelace. Ada Lovelace.
Yes, yes.
Yes. And
Yeah.
Ada Lovelace was, if I remember correctly, wasn't she? Yeah, she was the daughter. Wasn't she the daughter of Lord Byron? I think she was. Yes.
Yeah, the only legitimate child of Lord Byron.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So anyway, so Ada Lovelace was an offsider for Charles Babbage who did a lot of early work in computing. He did mechanical calculating machines. He never actually built a mechanical computer in his era, in his
Hmm.
time. However, some of his designs have actually been worked on since, and I believe there was one that was built fully and was able to work in the manner that he had
Yeah.
envisioned.
Right,
Yeah.
right. The Babbage engine, as it was called, was a proposed thing in its time, but the ideas didn't
Exactly.
come till like.
Exactly. I think it was prohibitively expensive to build in his time. It was still
Mhm.
relatively expensive to build in our time, but people did do it, and I think there's one in the London Science Museum or something like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway, Ada Lovelace. Just again, I'm probably digressing, but Ada Lovelace was either uh, a copy editor, was somewhere between a copy editor and the first programmer. So it's very, very common from feminist sources to claim that she was the
Mhm.
first programmer. Okay, that is actually plausible. She might have actually been the first programmer,
Mhm.
but it's possible that all she was really doing was just reviewing Babbage's work. So um, yeah, I think there is a stronger argument to claim that she might have been the first person to catch a bug in code, something along those lines. I think that's on stronger ground than the claim she was the first programmer.
Mhm.
But anyway,
Right.
so that was Ada Lovelace. Yeah, certainly an interesting character and worth reading about. But
Yeah.
anyway, so the Ada initiative,
Well, yeah. One thing I'd say is that they like to be kind of highfalutin about that factoid, assuming that it's correct. But I think that's a bit off from saying something on the caliber of the first software developer or something like that. Yeah, if that makes
yeah,
sense. So,
yeah. So
I think I distracted you there.
no, that's all right. Yeah, that's okay. So yeah, so the Ada Initiative was in any case named after Ada Lovelace, and yes, so it was a women in tech group that I'd personally known about for a very long time, and of course, then this serious accusation was made against a number of groups, and then yes, they shut down a few months later. It was all very mysterious, but it was nearly it was 9 years ago now, so a little bit over 9 years ago
Right.
that all this happened.
Mhm.
Anyway, so that was what I was alluding to in the previous episode. Um, that's all I have on Eric S. Raymond after all my digressions.
Right.
The next topic we have, I don't know if you have anything further on Eric Raymond. Otherwise,
No,
our next
I don't think
topic is
so.
Star Trek Discovery.
Oh yeah. So yeah. So did you want me to take this on or
Yeah, I'm happy for you too. I think you've been more current in what's going on in Star Trek. I have an idea what's
okay.
going on, but
Well,
go for it.
if you call what my thoughts on it current, but so there's a lot of buzz right now that Star Trek Discovery is being wiped from canon.
Hmm.
So here's what they mean. So we've gone to what I think is the last episode ever, fingers crossed, of Lower Decks. That's the animated Rick and Mortyization of Star Trek that I refuse to watch, just like any new Trek. But that supposedly, maybe somebody's actually watched it and can explain it a little bit better than me right now. But I'm going by what I understand. There was a scene in which alternate realities sort of had some kind of a swap, in which this Klingon character got swapped with a Discovery Universe Klingon, thereby relegating the whole Star Trek Discovery and by implication the Strange New Worlds continuity and the Picard enough elements of the Picard continuity and the yet to come. I can't wait to not watch this. Section 31 continuity is going to be non-canon from everything we understand from original series all the way through to Enterprise. Now, this is a bit of a double-edged sword because I'm going to quote Geordi from the Next Generation episode Hide and Q. I don't like who I have to thank because
Right.
I don't like Lower Decks either. And
Yep.
but they are the ones responsible for Discovery being phased out of actual canon. But I still don't like the multiverse argument because multiverse implies a meta canonicity, though. So I'm not
Mm,
100% satisfied with it still.
mm.
So, it's better than what we're forced before, but
Yes.
still. But you have some thoughts on it, Rob?
Well, no, I think that covers it really well. I was going to say that there was sort of a metacanonicity with regard to the movies because of the way they altered the timeline, but
Mhm.
actually it was meant to be the same universe, wasn't it? Because they'd altered the timeline of that universe.
So
So,
yeah, exactly.
mm,
So it's a way to kind of use the real continuity to sneak in a reboot continuity.
yes,
Right.
yes. Which was interesting, except I really didn't like the first movie, and so thus wasn't impressed with the idea at all. Yeah.
Mhm.
I did
Yeah,
the idea of rebooting it in that manner was interesting though.
yeah. Well, as a big Star Trek fan, at the time I was suckered in and kind of made myself like the first movie. And oddly enough, the J.J. Abrams Trek, it's still more bearable as a popcorn set of movies than any of the shows that came after with the
Yes,
Alex
I would
Kurtzman
agree.
and so forth.
I
So
would agree. I made it through the first movie, whereas I didn't
mm,
haven't made it through an episode of Discovery.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
be sure.
Yeah.
I made, as you people know, I made the mistake of watching the whole first season, cringing through 98% of it. And yeah, I did not touch season two on principle. I just yeah.
Yeah, I watched about half an episode of Discovery, and I was just really found it just
Right.
bored. And then I was interested in the future timeline, so I tried again with the third season, and managed to make it about 5 minutes in. And Michael had already had two fights in
Hmm.
that time, so that was enough for me. And I'm at about 4 episodes into Discovery, and I've never seen Lower Decks. I did watch an episode of Strange New Worlds. I It was all right. No, I didn't
Well,
like it that much.
it can't afford to be just all right, you know?
Exactly,
Because
it was all
right,
right.
yeah, I mean, it's got to have a an optimistic, uncynical view of the universe, but
Yeah.
Kurtzman Trek is all cynic. And speaking of all cynic, um, there there are people um who are not fans of Discovery, Picard, Strange New Worlds, what have you, but claim to think that Lower Decks is true in spirit to the Trek universe. But I think they're grasping at like some hopes that can't be fulfilled, if that makes sense.
Yes.
They're it looks absolutely cynical and it's full of woke. I don't see how this could be in any way close to what we had before that was good in Trek.
Yeah,
So
I've heard a number of people express that position, and I had been intrigued to perhaps watch an episode, um, but yeah, I'm really not qualified to comment because I haven't seen any yet.
right, yeah. And we haven't even discussed Star Trek Prodigy, I think it is, or something or other. And don't even I don't even have anything to go by that one. Since I'm not watching it, but it's the one I know the least about. I don't care who likes it. I think it's not going to be in the spirit of Star Trek. And I'm not even against animated Star Trek because I like the original animated series, But have a good series, please. And
Right.
but
So the original animated series is interesting. Yes, I've only seen a few episodes of it. And I'm actually thinking I will actually go back and watch all
right.
the episodes, I think, because many people have argued it is in fact the fourth season of the original series in reality.
Yeah, of sorts,
Yeah.
yes, right. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, the Star Trek the animated series were able to kind of do more creative liberties visually compared to the original series, where they might not have the budget to do something kind of wild in terms of alien appearances and so forth.
That's right.
Right.
And it was originally canon, and then I believe was removed from canon, and then was later returned to canon.
Um, Something like that, right?
Mm.
I'm pretty sure that the Yesteryear episode is at the very least established as canon. So,
Mm.
right,
I
yeah.
think, yeah, it was, if I the way I understood it was episodes like that kind of dragged the entire series in.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the very final episode of the series, which was not like a season close or anything like that, it was just the last episode of what they had was bad. But
Oh, was it?
no,
Okay.
yeah. It involves this episode, this universe where everything flows backwards. So the grandchildren are older than the grandparents, and it's so topsy-turvy. It's just too implausible to suspend your disbelief. But no series, no Star Trek series is perfect. No season of Star Trek is perfect. But um, but that's acceptable, right? Because most of it is good. But
Yeah,
then we went
that's
into
right.
unacceptable series.
If you want to see reverse timeline done well, I'd recommend Red Dwarf.
Yeah.
Excuse me, recommend Red Dwarf. Yeah, both in the books and in the TV series. Obviously, it's a comedy, so they can play that up quite well. And yeah, they did a universe where time travels backwards very, very well.
Mhm.
So I won't give anything
Right.
away anyway.
Okay.
I
All
don't think
right.
Red Dwarf is as popular in North America. I know people watch it, but I don't think it was as popular as it is here. It's a British science
Yeah.
fiction comedy series.
Right. Yeah. I don't think I've even heard of that.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Right. So all right. So the premise of Red Dwarf, for those who don't know, is it's the premise is quite interesting. So the Red Dwarf is in fact a mining ship, and I think the initially is in the 23rd century or something along those lines. And humans have settled the solar system, and this ship's sort of mining with somewhere in the outer solar system, and for reasons that are relevant to the plot, there's a disaster on board, and virtually the entire crew is killed, and and the entire ship is irradiated. And in actual fact, the only person who survives is a man by the name of Dave Lister, who was basically being punished for something he'd done. And the punishment involved him being basically put in suspended animation, because the idea is it's an 18-month haul on the ship. He's in suspended animation. He's revived at the end of the trip. He's missed out on 18 months pay, so that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And
Right.
right. So anyway, but because he was in suspended animation, he survived the disaster. And the AI on board the Red Dwarf, because the ship had been irradiated, it followed its programming and it pointed the ship towards deep space and sent it out into deep space so that no humans would encounter it and be killed with the radiation, right? 3 million years later, the radiation levels have declined to a point where it's now safe to revive old Dave Lister, who's been in suspended
Mhm.
animation, and the AI does. Now, it is a comedy. Now, remember, the
Mhm.
AI has been on its own for 3 million years. It's a bit senile by this point, and possibly on the edge of sanity. And poor old Dave Lister is now apparently the last human alive, because 3 million years have passed. Anyway, that sets up the premise of the series, and I'm sure you can see from there sort of the type of things they would talk about. One interesting thing, though, in Red Dwarf, and they've made this very, very clear, there are beings that are encountered, but they're not alien. All life you encounter in the Red Dwarf series is descended from life on Earth,
Okay.
because in those
Okay.
thousands of years after the red dwarf was irradiated, humans genetically engineered life forms, and some of them escaped and ended up settling, in their own created their own civilizations on other worlds and so forth. So they do encounter alien, well, they do encounter non-human beings, but they're all actually descended from life on Earth.
Okay.
Yeah.
It
So
looks
it's
kind of goofy. I'm looking at it right now. It's
yeah,
pretty.
it is a bit goofy. It is a bit goofy. They have one of the characters is a hologram, and if the ship's computer, the Red Dwarf, can only sustain one hologram, because obviously it's computationally very intensive to sustain an entire human mind, right? So
Yeah.
basically, the highest ranking person on the ship who is killed gets
Hmm.
recreated as a hologram so they can perform their function on the ship, right? Anyway, so the after Dave Lister is revived from stasis after 3 million years, the computer basically creates a hologram of his roommate, and so you've now got a hologram, as you know, on the ship with Dave Lister as the last human.
Hmm.
But they do tell stories like back on Earth, holograms were because holograms can't vote, right? Holograms are
Hmm.
considered to be dead, so they're actually
Right.
holograms marching through the streets demanding the franchise.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So, so,
Yeah.
yeah. So obviously they were paralleling things that have happened in 20th and 21st century. So it was quite
Hmm.
quite cute. Yes.
Right.
But yes. Anyway, I won't go into it more. But it's a fun story, and it's about well, there were 8 seasons, and I think that was sort of the classic set. And I think in the last few years they've actually made a few more seasons as well. So I
Okay. All right.
think they're up to 11 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, if I can find where to watch it, I think I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's well worth seeing. I'm sure there'll be somewhere to find it on a streaming service in the States. Definitely worth
Right.
checking out.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one I've watched. I first encountered when I was at high school. It's originally from the
Mhm.
1980s. Yeah.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Anyway, so that's all I've got to say, I guess, on Star Trek Discovery. I think you covered that really well, Vernon, in
Hmm.
regards to the canon and why they think and why people are arguing it's been removed from canon.
Hmm.
It's interesting actually that you mentioned that because some people are arguing it's only Discovery, whereas you're saying it's basically dragged out Strange New Worlds as well, because Strange New
Well,
Worlds is a
they're associated series, and it is
yeah.
my understanding, not that I've watched Picard, but there are enough
Mm.
elements in Picard that spun off from Discovery, and that it's by that I mean is part of the continuity of Discovery and so forth.
Right.
Right. But this idea of the multiverse thing though is
Mm.
I hate the abuse of it because it's just glorified fan fiction. Because
Yeah. Yeah.
we could go to actual what some would call an expanded universe unofficially but it's really just kind of stuff for the fans that are not in canon. Like take things like the Star Trek and X-Men crossovers in some of the books and some of the comics,
I
right?
hadn't heard of those.
Those look like they look more interesting because you kind of play off in like similar characters, and we've got the the situation where Picard meets I believe Professor X. I think they both played by the same character in live action. So I think that's kind of a funny thing to kind of see. But so they're kind of there to kind of play off sensibilities and like fan like what we call fan service, I suppose. But it's not good for canonic material
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, and there's been like Doctor Who ones, and I can't even think off the top of my head what else Star Trek actually crossed over with. But yeah, that's
Ah.
yeah. I'm drawing a blank on anything else, but
I
uh,
didn't know that there'd been a Doctor Who crossover, but that was obviously, like I say, expanded universe type stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
almost
Like this
fanfic.
the stuff of comics and
Yeah,
books, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Have you ever
but.
heard of? Oh, go on.
No, no, no. Well, the point I was making was is that if you just call it multiverse, it's just I'm sick of multiverses. Let's stick to
Yeah,
one continuity and not screw it up.
yeah, yeah. I'm not much into comics, but I do seem to recall that there was a comic series where they did something like this because they had so many continuity errors that they basically ended up having to decide it was a multiverse, and they ended up doing an episode called something like Crisis on Infinite Earths or something like that, where they,
Yeah, that was a
yeah,
see
was that
see.
Marvel?
I'm one of those guys that gets Marvel and DC confused all the time because I'm
Same,
not right.
same.
Yeah, nothing against it. It's just
No, it's just not my thing.
nothing against what was before. Nowadays, it's kind of
Mm,
well garbage anyway.
yeah.
But yeah, there was a Crisis on Infinite Earths that was really controversial. I know of it. I'm not a huge superhero comic reader, but but I'm aware of that particular set of stories. So
Yeah. So I have a friend who is who is very much into comics, and he's a comic expert. So if I have any questions related to that, I simply ask him. And in an actual fact, some years ago, so I've people may not know, but I've known Bettina Art for many, many years.
Yes.
And she called me one day and she asked me a comic question, and I
Oh,
said, I have no idea, but I can tell you who does. So I directed her towards my friend, and he was able to answer her questions. But yes, I think he's the first one who told me about Crisis on Infinite Earths. Anyway,
what
yeah.
kind of comic question did she have?
I don't recall now. It was many,
All
many
right.
years ago. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, since she's asking, the context has become interesting. So yeah.
yeah, right. Yeah, it was obviously to do with men's issues and so forth. I
Oh yeah,
do
of
not
course.
recall
Yeah.
what the context was now. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, but anyway, yeah. So the question I was going to ask you is: have you ever heard of Blake's Seven?
Yes, I
Oh,
want to
excellent.
watch that show. I want to watch that show so much. I've heard of Blake Seven. I heard it was dark. I heard it was a dark show.
Yes, it is. It
Yes,
is,
yeah.
and it really was ahead of its time. I grew up on Blake Seven. I loved it. See, we get in Australia, we got a lot of British TV, and so obviously it was natural and it's for me to get that. And so yeah, I really grew. I watched that when I was really quite
Hmm.
young, and yes, it is a dark series, and I think it really sort of it got me into the idea of a dark, gritty type sci-fi, which is a bit more
Right.
realistic.
Hmm.
And it was really ahead of its time because it was a serial. The episodes there was a continuity that went through the episodes, and that was really quite rare. I think it was 78 to 81. So 78 was the first year, and that was really quite rare at the time to do that. It was almost everything was episodic. In fact, it was very unusual. And apart from daytime soap operas, everything else was
Yeah.
episodic. So anyway, yes, well worth it. Now, just if you're going to see it for the first time, just bear in mind that it was on a very limited BBC budget. So,
Yep.
you've got to modify your
Limited budget
expectations
doesn't
on
bother.
that.
It doesn't
Yeah,
bother me. Yeah. So.
yeah. But where I think it shines is the dialogue. A lot of the dialogue is just spot on. But anyway, what I was going to say actually is Blake Seven. There was actually a proposal for a Blake Seven Doctor Who crossover in
Mhm.
an episode. I think it was going to be an
Right.
episode of Doctor Who, but I think it was both of the lead actors at the time actually nixed the idea.
Okay.
But having
Is Blake?
said that,
Is it a British show?
yes, in fact, I think they
Okay.
were both owned by the BBC at the time. Well,
Okay.
they both had the same owner at the time, so it was completely plausible legally that there could be a crossover. However, it has been pointed out that there's at least one setting mentioned in both Doctor Who and Blake Seven, as in this that it appears to be the same place. So
Right.
some people have argued they do in fact exist in the same continuity, even though Blake and Doctor Who never met. So
Hmm.
anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm reminded of back on the multiple continuities issues. So I don't watch Dallas. It's not my kind of show, right? But I've heard it was infamous for Who Shot This Guy episode, in which a long-standing character was killed off, and the whole series was, set. Not, I don't mean series. The season was set on the aftermath, but at some point it became established that that was all a bad nightmare
Yeah.
to bring the guy back. So yeah.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
this happened when I was a kid. I actually did watch Dallas as a
You
kid.
watched it. Okay.
I did watch it. I didn't probably like it that much, but
Yeah.
I did watch at least some episodes, and I do remember this happening. And what was really funny is a few years ago, it might be 10 or 20 years ago now, I was wondering whether I was remembering this correctly, that they'd actually, declared an entire season to be a dream. And,
Right.
and and yeah, and so I actually went and checked, and it was the case. Yeah, because in my memory, I'm thinking, no, that can't be right. They wouldn't have done that, and they
Right.
did. Yeah, yeah, and it was because it was so unpopular.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Oh yeah,
yeah,
right. Okay, so it's called Who Shot JR? And I think the Simpsons parodied it. Who Shot Mr. Burns, I think. Yeah, so
exactly.
yeah.
But I think that my understanding is that this once they'd done that and tried to basically roll back an entire series, the ratings tanked after that,
Hmm.
and I think the series was cancelled a couple of years later. I think they pretty much wiped it out. It really had jumped the shark.
Hmm.
Uh, and you're familiar with that phrase, aren't you?
Yes, of course. I know
Yeah,
what
right,
that
right,
what
right,
it's all about. Yeah.
right. And you know about the jumping of the shark?
Yes,
About
I
the
do.
about right about so
Yeah.
for those who don't know, there was a show called Happy Days and a character called Fonzie, and
Hmm.
Fonzie actually jumped a shark
Right.
on water skis, and the show's ratings tanked as a result of that. and then thus any series that basically pushes the premise so far past its original idea that it becomes almost nonsensical or destroys a suspension of disbelief is said to have jumped the shark. Well, I actually remember that episode. I actually watched it when it first came to Australia about him
Right.
jumping the shark. And yes, I remember at the time it striking me as a bit odd. And
Hmm.
obviously it did for a lot of other people too.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when a show has to kind of uh go retroactive on something and
Yeah.
you know it's it's screwed up, and we know that the Discovery people knew that they've screwed up because um Star Trek Enterprise is a masterpiece compared to uh the atrocities that Discovery did. Absolutely. Yeah.
Look, I know, even though I haven't seen it, I know a little bit about it. This spore drive thing, it just seems that it was well beyond the
It's
technology.
like if you explain it to a layman, they
What were
travel
they thinking?
space with shrooms, mushrooms. You know,
Oh, they really do.
it's
I've heard people mention the mushrooms. I thought that was a
you know,
joke.
well, it's no, 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 I mean, you know,
Oh,
spore
yeah.
drive. You know, it's
Yeah,
practically
right.
like space mushrooms. It's like
Yeah.
LSD and you know, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure that's what they were on when they wrote the
Maybe
stuff.
they're not going anywhere and they just think they're
Right,
traveling the universe. Yeah.
right. Well, the ship is bigger than the Sovereign class USS Enterprise E,
Oh, I
right?
didn't know that.
Well, it looks huge. They said it's an experimental ship, but no, it- the 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 late Next Generation cast would have, I would have said they would have shat themselves if they saw the technology of the Discovery. But this is supposed to take place in between the pilot episode, The Cage, um, and Where No Man Has Gone Before, the second pilot. So this
Yep.
is all stuff that's supposed to take place in between those those two pilots, by the way, the
Yeah.
pilots. Right. So it's early
Yeah.
as possible stuff. And and, you know, I've heard some kind of complaints from some Discovery critics that said that the cage was not canon. Well, they're kind of wrong because the menagerie kind of
Mm,
enveloped its way into being canon. So they
that's
altered some
right.
details, but the cage is basically accepted as, in my mind, at least canon
Yeah.
as part of the whole continuity of things. Now, so here it is stuck in this in between these two points in Trek lore, and it can go anywhere in the universe at instant speed. How is this possible? You know, it's like, and you know, the nightmares kept on happening because now we're accidentally in the mirror universe, which we're not supposed to discover until the mirror episode in the second season of Star Trek. Um, and there's talk about a Section 31 that's public knowledge now.
Oh,
It's not even, you know, Section 31 was a mystery even when it's introduced in DS9.
yes.
They don't have uniforms, officially at least. They don't have insignia. It's so secretive. It's like in the minds of select people who are involved in it.
Mm,
There's no official organization at Section 31.
yeah.
But we have this upcoming series and more establishments in the Discovery, as far as I understand it, that makes it so like it's some kind of a real CIA kind of a thing, you know, like a or an you know, it kind of
Yeah.
really formalized. It's terrible, and I can't wait to not watch Section 31 when it comes out.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to not watch that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's bizarre. I hadn't actually heard about that one. That is truly odd.
Right.
Uh,
Right. And you
but
know
I
about
guess,
Section 31, right? Like
yeah, of
from Deep
course.
Space
Yeah.
Nine? Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Um, yeah, it was bad enough that they mentioned Section 31 in Enterprise, I think, let
Mhm.
alone that
Right.
wow, that's really odd. Um,
Mhm.
gosh. Yeah, Trek is dead to me.
Mhm.
So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
And I know, I mean, you know, this non-canonizing of Discovery sounds like something, but I'm not, I'm not bandwagoning with the other guys saying that saying like singing the praises of Lower Decks or whatever or anything like that. Like I said, I don't like who I have to thank, and I don't, I I still don't plan on watching Lower Decks, so I am not optimistic of anything else to come from this, still I need solid. I need to know something. I need solid proof that they're going back to doing something, a good show, something that's
Yeah.
recognizably Star Trek. But, we need to kind of know that we're not doing this woke thing anymore, and that we're gonna do a good, an actual innovative show, and something that's it's gonna be a lot of damage control to make that happen, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, woke is absolutely rolling back in many, many
Mhm.
areas, but that doesn't necessarily mean they can produce a good show at this point. So,
Exactly,
uh,
because I'm
yeah,
seeing some of the anti-woke shows that are coming out. Like, um, Daily Wire Plus has this animated show that I haven't even begun to real look at, but it just looks like a bad. It's just like a anti-woke version of whatever's bad about woke out there. It's just lazy.
mm,
It's like and
yep.
there's this post-apocalyptic kind of show that's going on. I don't know. I'm trying to remember what it was called, like Homestead something. I'm trying to remember. I think I saw it on Twitter once, but it doesn't look that interesting to me either. I don't like post-apocalyptic crap. Like the reason I like Star Trek is the same reason I don't like post-apocalyptic stuff. So
So I actually do like post-apocalyptic stuff,
darn.
but it has to be done, but it has to be done well.
Mhm.
And there are
Right, yeah.
certainly plenty of bad examples of it.
Right, yeah, because
Yeah.
I just don't like pessimism,
No,
and
fair
I
enough.
don't, yeah, I don't like seeing our future in the gutter, basically.
Fair enough. All right. Steel yourself for Blake Seven a little bit then. Uh,
Well, I know I am, I'm perfectly willing to give that a chance. I'm going to see that when I can,
yeah,
but
yeah.
but at least I know it's good.
Because
So,
it is a dystopian world they live in. That's all I'll
right,
say.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, there are some good, I think, post-apocalyptic stories out there.
Yeah.
I really like gosh, amazing. I'm having trouble. Logan's Run. I had trouble thinking of
Logan's
the name
Run.
there for a
I've
moment.
heard
Logan's
of that
Run.
one.
So, right. So, Logan's Run was arguably the last big sci-fi film before Star Wars came out. Actually,
Mm,
it was about a year before Star Wars. Um, I really love the premise of the movie, which actually is very different to the book.
hmm.
But the premise of the movie is that there's been some sort of nuclear war and there's only a few thousand people left. It does have the same problem that Planet of the Apes has, that they only, which is another dystopian story, another post-apocalyptic story I love, but that they only really explore a sort of small area of the Earth, and it's possible other things are going on in other parts of the Earth we don't know about. But at least in the part we know about, there's a city with I think about 5,000 people or something like that. And because the resources, it's been for a few hundred years, the Earth has been uninhabitable outside this domed city, and the resources have to be carefully balanced in order to avoid overconsumption. And
Yes.
one of the ways they do that is to maintain a population balance, and the system executes everybody on their 30th birthday.
Mm,
So the idea is that on your 30th birthday, but it's a religious, they've turned it into a religious festival. And
hmm.
so the humans joyfully enter what's called carousel on their 30th birthday, where they're lifted up into the sky and inside this arena, and they hope to renew and become reborn. So if they believe in their religion that if they renew, that their soul will then enter a baby, and they'll be reborn. And
Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead. Go ahead. Sorry. Sorry.
so if you run from carousel, the Sandmen come after you and they kill you. and then you're dead because there's no chance to renew. So to anybody who's religious in the society, the idea that somebody would run just makes no sense because
Hmm.
you're going to die if you when the Sandmen catch up with you, right?
Right.
But the premise of the story is that some people believe there are plenty of people who aren't really au fait with this whole system and think that nobody really renews,
Hmm.
and some people think that there's a place called Sanctuary somewhere outside the city, and you can escape there and survive in Sanctuary and live the rest of your life and not die, right?
Right.
Uh, and so many of the runners, not all, many of the runners are trying to get to Sanctuary. Some of them don't. Some of the runners don't know about Sanctuary at all. They just kind of know what they're doing. They've got no plan really. They're just running and
Yeah.
trying to hide from the Sandmen, and naturally they get killed.
Hmm.
The Sandmen are actually pretty good at their job, by the way. So
Yeah.
anyway, the movie talks about a couple of runners, and I won't give it away the details, but a couple of runners, people who are trying to flee to Sanctuary and what their experiences are. But
Hmm.
the world in which the world that they set up inside the domes is a fascinating world, and I really wish they'd explored it more because it's really it's a utopian society. The people who live there have all of their needs met, but of course the problem is that you don't get to live past 30. So
Right.
you have 30 great years, but after that, not so much.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I wonder if this is what the Next Generation episode Half a Life was inspired by, because that one had a civilization that committed suicide at 30 also.
Right, and I do remember that episode, and yes, I would say yes, exactly. That would have been. It's been a big influence actually.
Yeah.
If you watch it, you'll probably realize how many influences you've seen in other media. Logan's Run, the movie in particular, was
Yeah.
really a huge influence. But really, it is great. The imagery, the way it's done with the colorful clothing, everybody has something called a life clock, which is basically embedded in their left palm, and it's silver when you're born and then gradually changes color. So it's yellow, then green, then red. And when you get just before your 30th birthday, it starts to flash red for about the last few days.
Yeah. Right.
And that means that you're on the countdown to go to carousel.
Right.
And there are no natural births in the society. There are just these gestation units.
Mhm.
The idea of a natural birth is considered to be the people in the society would view a natural birth essentially the way we would view incest. It's a
Yeah.
taboo in their society. It turns their stomach, the idea of a
Yes.
natural birth.
Yeah.
But there are elements in the society. There's an underground of people who don't believe in the religion, who would like to experience a natural birth and so forth. But
Mm.
but they're considered to be, yes. So that's really they're people they're considered to be very troubled people in this society.
Mhm. All right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But by the way, that Half-Life episode of Star Trek it's 60, not 30.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
So okay, so right. Oh, I know that. Yes, I was actually thinking of a different one. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Now I recall the one you mean. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I was actually thinking of a different one.
Yes. I'm sure it was 60.
But
Yeah, something like that.
yeah, yeah, because there is a society in Star Trek 2 where everybody's living in a dome. I think that in Next Generation, but I don't think they have a limited lifespan. Yeah. Anyway,
In a dome.
yeah,
Um,
they're living in an isolated society on a distant planet, and they set up basically tried to create the perfect society. They've got highly intelligent
yes,
engineers.
the
Basically, it was I don't
Masterpiece
think it was
Society. Yeah. Yeah.
right. What was this? What was that? Sorry.
The episode is called the Masterpiece Society, and
Okay, and
everything has to be where it is. Everything is planned down to the
yeah, that's
last.
right. And
Yeah.
I think it was a reference to eugenics too. I think it was basically a eugenicist society, and the residents in this society who believed they were going to excel past anything else humans have done were shocked when they encountered the Enterprise and found themselves, a couple of hundred years behind.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
So anyway, yeah. So yeah, that's Logan's Run, which if you've never seen it, I highly recommend.
Yeah. Heard of it?
One
I'll go ahead and I'll try to
Great.
watch it.
One of my favorite movies of all time. That may be all I have on science fiction for today. Star
Yeah, I
Trek
think we
Discovery.
talked quite a bit about it.
Exactly. The next one I have on my list is child support. I think this is one you mentioned. You brought up, Vernon. Do you want to
Yeah, yeah.
run with
So we
that?
got So every so often on Twitter, I try to gauge whoever might be listening to the goalpost, and that give us feedback, throw us questions, and so forth, and then we'll read the meaningful ones at least. So. But this time we actually got something from a Twitter user Blur. Okay, so his quote is, "It's interesting how people insist that fathers who don't even get to see their children must pay child support, but have no interest in ensuring that the mother spends even 1 cent on the child. Seriously, she never has to prove it." Thank you, Blur, for the comment. All right, Robert, thoughts on that?
Yeah, so essentially, guess what I was thinking is that, and this is something that I have seen raised before. By the way, I've known Blue Burr for a while too. We've chatted many times privately, and Blue Burr, I don't think I've ever credited Blue Burr on this before. Thank you to Blue Burr for picking up a number of errors in the universal suffrage page on Wiki for Men. Probably maybe about half a dozen total or something. The Blue Burr picked up over a period of time and errors or areas that needed clarification. So it was really great. He was able to raise those points, and I was able to fix them up straight away. I'll do a bit of research and sort that out. So that was really good. But in terms of the child support, yeah, this is something that has been raised. That essentially, now it's we could talk about custodial and non-custodial parents. It's primarily the mother that's custodial in these cases. The father is essentially giving the mother money, and then the mother is making purchases, but there's no real tracking for how those purchases, what happens with those purchases. And what I'm about to suggest here is not an original idea. I've seen it mentioned a number of times. There's really no reason why there couldn't be a type of credit card, because we already have Visa debit cards out there, and many countries have that. The US has it. We have it here in Australia, and you would have a card, uh, and the non-custodial parent, usually the father, could put money on the card. The custodial parent would be able to spend money on that card. Both of them would receive an itemized list of purchases, and if it becomes necessary or if a complaint is made, an independent body could audit the usage of the card. Some people have suggested that uh, the the areas in which it could be used would be limited, like food or something like that. I'm not necessarily a fan of that, because you can't necessarily predict what the needs will be in the future. Like, for example, taking the child to an event might be, well, a perfectly reasonable use of that money. So I don't think it should be limited. However, if the custodial parent uses it inappropriately, they need to be called to account for that, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
And at this point, there's really no excuse not to implement it. The technology, everything we need is there, and quite frankly, has been there for several decades now. There's no reason why this should be standard. As soon as this arrangement is in place, the courts arrange for one of these cards to be created. I'm sure the government could talk banks into participating in this program. There's at least one other example I can give you where the Australian government has talked major corporations into adhering to a policy without having to pass any laws or do anything else. So I think it would be something where they wouldn't even need to pass laws. They could probably just get the banks on board to say, as a community service, we will offer these cards. As an aside, in case anyone's wondering what the area I'm referring to is, there was a very serious problem of petrol sniffing, gas sniffing in Central Australia, where predominantly Aboriginal youth would sniff the petrol. It's a very cheap and, I understand, very effective high. And all they had to do was get themselves a couple of litres of fuel, put it to their face. And, this was really damaging stuff that would damage the brain really quickly and so forth. And the Australian government managed to talk the various petroleum supplying companies in Australia to manufacturing a variety of fuel that you could not get high on, distributing it in Central Australia, and wearing the cost. So the oil companies, or these companies, actually wear the cost of this, supply it to Central Australian gas stations or petrol stations. And yeah, no law was required. The government just got these companies on board. So it is possible.
Yeah.
So yes, I think it's a solution. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that area.
I got nothing to add myself, but I agree.
Yeah.
Basically.
And the only reason I think we're not doing this is it's a lack of political will, and the various feminist groups and others that have pushed back against it when anything like this has even been suggested. But
Yep.
there's really no, in my view, there's no excuse for not having this in the game with that current level of technology.
Right. Yep. I think that's all on our list, right?
It is, except of course Zoe McClellan.
Yes, right. Let's do it.
As of December 2024, a warrant is outstanding for the arrest of Zoe McClellan in relation to charges of kidnapping, child stealing, and child custody deprivation. McClellan was reportedly residing in an apartment in River Ridge, Louisiana in April 2021 and may still be residing in the area. McClellan grew up in the area of Port Orchard, Washington State, and may have returned to that area. Some sources believe that McClellan has left the United States and is residing in Canada or Costa Rica. Prior to disappearing, McClellan was known to use the alias Sarah Chandler. Anyone with any relevant information should contact the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. I'm going to keep saying this until we have some movement on this.
Yeah. All right. Well, happy New Year to you. Yeah.
Thank you. And you too.
Yep.
And happy 50th episode.
Yes, absolutely. I think we had a good one.
We did, absolutely. And I will see you for episode 51 in a couple of weeks.
See you then. See you next year.
Bye.
Bye.